Thank you all for joining us here. Welcome to the Flip Personal Finances Workshop with Miss Anna Sheufelt, who has joined us here today. Thanks a lot for joining, everyone. First, we're just going to go over the brief agenda. First, we'll talk about what is financial literacy, why is financial literacy important, some applications, a little more about FAFSA, and Chinmayi will talk about some of these things on the other half of this year. And finally, we'll end off with a Q&A with Ms. Sheufelt about personal finances. So first, what is financial literacy? Financial literacy is the ability to understand and implement various financial skills. And why is it important? Well, financial literacy is a necessary skill that people use throughout their lives, and it's quite essential to develop at a young age because a lot of times people find themselves struggling in a financial aspect later on in life. And so if they learn these things at a younger age, they could start implementing some fundamentals early on. So a little more about our organization. What is FLIP? FLIP stands for the FLIP stands for the Financial Literacy Introduction Program. We have a 16-week curriculum developed with Bank of America Better Money Habits. And our target audience is 7th to 12th graders because like I mentioned, the younger the better for financial literacy education.
So like Saqib said, FLIP is a very crucial part of the YEI. And we partner our volunteers with local organizations. And we have a wide range of topics that we teach, and we try to promote people to learn. And this can include a lot of topics, many of them such as budgeting, insurance, credit, taxes, and identity theft. So in order to get volunteer opportunities, you can attend a flip session like you are with this one. You can also join the YEI and volunteer in the flip department, and you can even get the Presidential Volunteer Service Award, certified volunteer hours. This can include from medals and certificates, or you can give back to your community in your own way. So yeah. So there are also scholarships that you can apply for college, and merit-based scholarships are basically scholarships that are determined based on your merits, such as your academics, your extracurriculars, and other factors other than your family's financial status. And some of these are very competitive, such as the Coca-Cola Scholarship, Davidson Fellows, Taco Bell Scholarship, and others, whereas need-based scholarships are based on your family's financial status, and these are the Gates Scholarship and State Scholarship. And I know that some of these scholarships have recently announced their 2023 finalists, so this is something to look forward for next year when you guys apply. And FAFSA is basically the free application for federal student aid. And it's something that you fill out when you do your college apps. And it determines your financial aid from the government based on your family's financial status and other information. It collects a wide range of information, such as your social security number, personal income, the list of colleges you apply to, and other factors. And this is usually known as the first step in paying for college. So now let's get into why we're here. This is Miss Anna Sheufelt from Duke University. She's the Assistant Director for Educational Programming, and she oversees the personal finance at Duke program. So we would love if you can introduce yourself once again, and we can get started with the Q&A.
Awesome. Well, I will keep my intro short. Yes, my name is Anna. I work at Duke University and oversee programming around personal finances, loan management, finances in school, finances as folks are graduating and leaving behind that role as a student and entering the quote unquote real world. But certainly questions about finances come up while folks are in school preparing for college applications, deciding what schools they want to attend to, and all of that. So, our focus for this evening is going to be on college finances. So we'll talk through general costs, maybe some broad information about financial aid, and my area of expertise, loans. So whenever y'all are ready, happy to get into some of those questions.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Sheufelt. Well, now we're going to move on to the Q&A. So, if you guys have any questions, you can either drop them in the chat and we'll read them out, or you can just unmute, blurt it out, whatever you want to do. And we'll actually go through some questions that we received earlier on. And if in the middle, anytime you feel like you have a question, please do not hesitate to drop it in the chat. So I'm just going to stop share here for a bit. And yeah, Chinmayi, would you like to read out some of the questions?
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with the category of general costs. So the first question we got is, what are the typical costs associated with attending college?
So that broad term of cost of attendance, which during the college application process, you will come across a lot. Cost of attendance is the official sticker price that every university, every college has to publish. Whether or not you will actually pay that out of pocket, we're going to get into that with more of our financial aid and loans piece, but that cost of attendance consists of a couple different pieces. So the first thing is to separate out the two types of expenses associated with being a student: billable expenses and non-billable expenses. The cost of attendance is going to account for both, not only so you can plan the realistic expense of being in school, but so that you can also use financial aid, things like scholarships, grants, and loans to pay for, again, those non-billable aspects of being a student. So once you're in school, well, what are you likely to see on that bill? That's probably the first question folks are asking. These are going to be your very broad tuition costs, fees, room and board, or housing and meal plan. Again, tuition, what is the cost of being in the classroom? Fees, those are often going to be things like utilizing support services on campus, going to the rec center, going to a computer lab. So these are definitely all still parts of the student experience, but not necessarily what's going to happen in the classroom. Then from there, we've got more not in the classroom fees with that room and board, so housing and meal plans. Generally speaking, most first-year students are required to live on campus. With that comes eating on campus, so that's where you're going to get some kind of meal plan. So I would say largely those are going to be the four main billable costs that are going to consist that cost of attendance. Non-billable, so things that your school is not going to charge you for, but they want you to plan for. That's going to be things like textbooks, laptop, course materials, things like hygiene expenses, having money set aside to go have fun with your friends. Most of the students I work with at some point get sick of their meal plan, so money to spend on food that's not in the cafeteria or the dining hall. So those are going to be, again, the types of costs you're going to see. What that major cost of attendance number looks like, again, that's going to depend on a couple different factors, which I know is a question we have coming up soon.
Thanks a lot. Another question that we received is, how do tuition fees vary between public and private universities, in-state and out-of-state, domestic and international?
So again, this is going to be dependent school to school. Couple general trends that I typically see. Oftentimes, I'm going to see public institutions be a little bit cheaper than a private school counterpart. Typically, if you are an in-state resident applying to an in-state institution, your cost of attendance will largely be less than maybe an out-of-state applicant. And I would say very similar trend for domestic students and non-resident students. But keep in mind, a lot of those other factors, the type of school it is. Is it considered an elite institution? Is it a school that maybe isn't as well known? Those are going to be other things that start to come up. So that private versus public, other things like that. But cost of attendance is going to vary. But again, keep in mind what your actual out-of-pocket expense is may not necessarily be that cost of attendance figure.
That's great. Thank you for answering that question, Ms. Sheufelt. So the next question is, how do extracurricular activities and involvement impact college expenses?
So the nice thing about college campuses, for the most part, the money that you are paying in fees is going to get you access to many, many co-curricular opportunities, and you aren't necessarily going to need to pay out of pocket. So keep that in mind. There are lots of things that you can do, different types of clubs and organizations you can get involved in that will not cost you a cent. And there are types of opportunities that will cost extra that aren't necessarily going to be part of your university bill. They may not even be built into the cost of attendance. I would say the most major expenses that I see, things like club sports or Greek life, are probably going to be the types of extracurricular activities that you will definitely pay something extra out of pocket. Even certain co-curricular activities like study abroad can cost more than maybe just a dollar for dollar exchange of credit hours. So I would say, again, start reflecting on not just the academic costs, but think about what you want your co-curricular experience to look like. And you may even be able to reach out to currently enrolled students or ask on an admissions tour so that you can get a sense of what some of those other experiences might cost as well.
That's quite interesting. Thanks a lot. The next question is, what is the average cost of textbooks and supplies per semester?
So again, little bit program specific, but I would say the average college student can probably expect to spend somewhere between $500 to $600 every semester on textbooks. Now, somebody who is in maybe a health professions or pre-med track, when we're talking biology textbooks, anatomy and physiology, you may want to estimate a little bit higher. I was in the humanities, I majored in history, and a lot of my textbooks were just regular books that, you could get in a bookstore on Amazon. They weren't these heavy duty college textbooks. So your major will definitely have some kind of impact, but especially for those first 2 years in school, while you're probably going to be in general education courses, I would say plan to spend $500 to $600 each semester.
Thank you. So now let's get into the financial aid category. The first question is, how does the process of applying for financial aid work?
So Chinmayi, you kind of introduced this a little bit with your mention of the FAFSA, but the start of the financial aid process is always going to be documentation. You have to give some type of picture of your financial situation, some type of picture of your academic record, your extracurricular accolades while in school. All of those pieces are going to have some type of stake in what your financial aid might look like. Things like the FAFSA or the CSS profile, Common Scholarship Search, that some institutions use alongside of the FAFSA. A lot of times those are going to be used to assess more of like your need-based financial aid. Some of that same material can also be used for some of the merit-based information. I would also say, for folks who are still kind of maybe in that initial phase of researching what types of institutions they're looking for, especially for those merit-based scholarships, usually there's extra paperwork involved, or sometimes you even have to go and take competitive essays, interview with people. So make sure you are also looking for the requirements and the timelines, not just the FAFSA, not just the CSS profile, but if there's any extra documentation you need to submit for merit-based scholarships, look out for that as well, because every institution is going to be different.
That's quite interesting as well. Thanks a lot. The next question is, what are the options for financial aid, such as scholarships, grants, and loans?
So we've talked about this a little bit. Again, probably the biggest difference you're going to see is going to start with your merit-based and need-based. Merit-based and need-based aid, again, what are the accolades? What's your high school resume? That's going to be your merit-based. And then what's your financial need? That's going to be your need-based aid. Usually for merit-based, we're going to be talking strictly grants and scholarships. Sometimes there are certain forgivable loan programs that may look at those accolades, but oftentimes with need-based aid, we are going to see not just grants and scholarships, but loans come up in the picture, as well as work study.
Yeah, thank you. Now let's get into our last question. This is something that a lot of people have been asking. This is in the category of loans. What are the potential long-term effects of student loan debt?
So the big question that I think can really be summed up just when thinking about, is taking out loans for this academic program the right decision for me? The big question that we're looking at is what's going to be this return on investment? Will I end up making my dollar back based on the loans I borrowed and the professional trajectories I've unlocked with this education? A lot of professional and folks in the financial education world will recommend to try to keep loan payments at about 10% of your salary. So that monthly take home that you have when you are making a budget, ideally we want those loan payments to stay around 10%. With the average starting salary for an undergraduate with a bachelor's degree, 55,000 is about what you're going to be looking at. Again, that's the average. You could see higher starting amounts in different fields, but definitely do your research on that return on investment. If you know that you want to be in a big city, but you also know that you're maybe looking into a helping skills role, social work, that is your calling, that is your passion. Start doing the research on, well, what's my cost of living average? What are those average starting salaries? And if I was going to go to school A, B, and C, what are those different costs? What might I have to borrow? Does the loan amount make sense with the other financial pieces? Can be a little bit of guesswork because, again, you don't always know what life is going to look like at 18, 5 years down the road, 7 years down the road. But as much research and reflection that you can do, when we see folks over borrow and not necessarily have that return on investment, there's a lot of sacrifices. It's not to say that folks might not be able to make those loan payments work, but you might have to choose the longest repayment plan. You might have to pay back double of what you originally borrowed in the first place. You might have to sacrifice living in a big city that tends to come with more costs and live somewhere that, again, maybe wasn't your dream destination, but it worked a little bit more with your financial constraints. So it definitely makes sense to do that research, do those reflections, and think about the things that you might be saying no to because of the dream school that you absolutely wanted to say yes to at 18.
Thanks a lot for that answer. I think that concludes the event. Uh, there we go. Is it sharing?
I think it was
1 second.
loading.
Yeah.
All right, never mind. Thank you all for joining us today. Big thank you to Ms. Sheufelt for helping us with this event, answering all the questions. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, reach out to flip@dyei.org. But other than that, I think that's about it. Any last words, Chinmayi or Ms. Sheufelt?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. It was great working with you, and I hope we can work together next year, maybe. But yeah, we really appreciate you spending time, and this was very informative. So yeah.
Yeah, happy I could join. And again, for folks on the call, there's lots of resources out there. I would say one of the best resources you'll have available are just the different schools that you're interested in attending. And then certainly, where you can find stories of folks on their experience with financing college. You don't know what you don't know. So try to increase that network where you can. Talk to alumni from your high school, talk to folks within the Flip chapter. You all have a really great community here. I'm sure there's lots of folks who would want to share their experiences with college finances.
Really appreciate it. Once again, thanks to everyone for joining. Mark has one specific question for the guest speaker. I don't know if you want to ask that in private, or could you specify that?
Oh, sure thing. It's more specific pertaining to the university.
because I was lucky enough to be accepted into Duke for the class of 2027, and I just had some specific questions to ask about the financial situation at my university. So maybe if those questions aren't as widely applicable to everyone in the Zoom party, maybe it's best if I don't ask aloud, maybe afterwards, but I don't mind if other people want to listen in as well, if it's information that the guest speaker may feel also pertains to others.
Okay, in that regards, there's just 1 minute left in the Zoom call. So I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to ask the question. However, Ms. Sheufelt, you could just drop your email in the chat and Mark could reach out to you and that way you guys can communicate. Is that
That
okay,
would be
Mark?
great.
I'm so sorry about
Yes, thank
that.
you.
Yeah. No problem.
Yep, I was going to suggest the same thing just in case it's not something I can speak to. We can coordinate more via email.
All right. Thanks a lot for joining, everyone. Hope to see you guys again in another Flip event. Take care.
All right, bye, y'all.
Good night, bye.